With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Ernie Bousta, who writes, just last week, I heard you talking about the great themes from the 80s, shows like Knight Rider. That's right, Knight Rider, A-Team, Airwolf, you name it. Did you see the reports that James Wan is producing a Knight Rider movie? I think this sounds awesome. The only thing I would be worried about is if they try to set it in the 80s. I think something like Knight Rider is even better suited to today than it was in the 80s, if done right. So I hope it happens in modern times. What do you think? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, for those of you who may not have heard, there is a Knight Rider movie coming. Now, we've heard that song and dance before. Just a few years ago, they were talking about doing a Knight Rider movie. That never really manifested. But there is a Knight Rider movie coming. Now, I don't know if James Wan himself is going to be a producer on it. It just mentions that his company is going to be one of the production companies behind this thing. So maybe he's actively involved as a producer or not. But they are doing this thing. And to answer your question, coming from the Wrap, it tells us this. Time to rev up the engines of that 1982 Pontiac Trans Am because Spyglass Media Group has partnered with James Wan's and Michael Clear's Atomic Monster to develop a movie based on the 1980s NBC classic Knight Rider, according to an individual with knowledge of the project. Plot details for the upcoming film are being kept inside Flag, that was the organization, headquarters, but the brief intel we got is that the film will be modern day and maintain the anti-establishment of the original series. So it will be modern day and will kind of maintain that whole anti-establishment law and order, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, which is great. I, for one, completely agree with you. Like when I first heard they were going to do another Knight Rider, my first thought was like yours, was I hope they don't do it in the 80s. And here's the other thing. Going back to my AMC days, I still remember when the news came out that they were trying to develop a Knight Rider movie, and it was going to be strictly a comedy. It was going to be strictly a comedy. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I wasn't at all interested in it. It was Knight Rider. I was still interested in it. But I like the idea of them, yeah, make it light, but you know, also make it like, hey, a modern thing, a super spy thing who's got this advanced piece of technology, this self-aware AI car, which is more relevant today than probably at any other time in history. It's actually, this is a perfect time in our history to do a show like this, or to do a movie like this, I should say. And whether or not James Wan is really actively hands-on involved in something like this or not, I mean, it'd be great if he is, if he's not, whatever. I still think this is great. Don't involve David Hasselhoff. I love the Hoff, but don't connect this to the original TV show. Just obviously have him do a cameo in it as something, as a bartender or something like that, but don't make him Michael Knight in this thing. They tried to do that with that failed TV series. You remember that, Rob? They started up a new Knight Rider series, and it was an extension of the original show.
Not so good.
Not so good. Did not work out so well. But I'll tell you, Rob, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you, I'm pretty excited about this. And I hope they use some version, not the original music, but like an updated cover of that original music would be kind of cool to hear. But I like what I'm hearing. What do you think about this?
Well, what's so strange is now we live in a world where cars drive themselves. You know that there's more kit than ever around, and I think that who doesn't. This is one of those ideas. Like when you hear Charlie's Angels is coming out, it's like okay, but the potential of what they could do with the concept of Knight Rider today with today's technology, and I mean, can you imagine if it was? First of all, James Wan, I keep thinking back to his movie Death Sentence he made with Kevin Bacon. I know he's only producing, but I think
this movie, violent film.
I think this movie could kick ass. I mean, if you know, I think back to movies like I really loved Michael Mann's theatrical feature version of the Miami Vice, the updating of Miami Vice. I thought it was serious. I thought it was really cool.
I think that was Colin Farrell, and who else was in that with him?
And Jamie Foxx.
And Jamie Foxx, that's right.
You know, and I think that if they don't go, I just hope they don't make it campy. I would love to see a serious, just kick-ass take on the Knight Rider concept and just make it awesome. You know, don't go too Hobbs and Shaw with it. You know, pull it back, maybe a little bit more of the Bourne Identity. something killer. Like, I just want to see something that's awesome. I mean, still, it's Knight Rider, so there's an inherent little bit of, it's going to have a little goofiness in it. I think it has to. You can't take it too seriously. But I just want it to kick ass, man. Because I think it'd be great. Who wouldn't want to see that? You peak nostalgia and then put in some modern kick-assness. And I think it'd be great.
Yeah, and listen, I've got to agree with you. I think, look, the original Miami Vice was fundamentally different than the original Knight Rider, right? They were two very different kinds of shows. So, but Knight Rider did have inherent campiness to it, right? So I think you've got to at least bring an element of that. You got to at least bring some element of that into it. Like, I think you can do it hardcore, real fun, great action, super spy kind of thing, but also incorporate just a little bit of that campiness in there just to give it a bit of, but I agree with you though. Not to the same level that the show was. Don't try to make this thing a comedy. Don't, like, have some laughs, but don't make it a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, when they do like 21 Jump Street, the original series was not a comedic series. However, their take on it for the movies, 21 and 22 Jump Street, were really good. It was really well cast, really well done, very funny, and sure, like this is not like Knight Rider at all, but I think one of the great action comedies that works both as a great comedy and a great action movie was Beverly Hills Cop. The first Beverly Hills Cop, that had some killer action in it, that truck chase at the beginning, and yet it still had an edge to it. I mean, it was R-rated, there was violence, there was great action scenes. I'm not saying you go that comedic, but if you had that balance of kick-ass action along with humor, you could really have something. And I don't know why I'm so excited for this idea, but I am. Maybe I'm too excited for this, John. I don't know why. I read this yesterday. I'm like, yeah, man, and I'm on the hype train. I am on the hype train.
And I hope James Wan is more involved than not. Like, I don't need him directing it per se, although that would be exciting. But I hope he is a little bit more hands-on this project than a typical producer. So we'll have to wait and see. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this news that there's going to be a Knight Rider movie coming with James Wan involved? How do you think they should have? What kind of tone should it have? Should it be more like the 80s show, or should it be a little bit more modern of a take? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.